Did you know that most red meat in the US is inflammatory, but not for the reasons that you think? Today, I sit down again with Monica Corrado, teaching chef and expert in traditional healing foods, often called the GAP chef. She's helped thousands of people heal their gut, reduce inflammation by going back to how our ancestors prepared food. Slow, simple, and intentional. You'll learn what kind of red meat actually supports healing, why plant proteins in store-bought nut milks may be harder on your body than you think, and how food prep methods can make a huge difference. Stay until the end to hear Monica's simple tip for the best probiotic you already have in your kitchen. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm Dr. Katie Deming, and this is the Born to Heal podcast, where we share practical tools and knowledge to help you create true conditions for healing in your life. Let's welcome back to the show, Monica Corrado, teaching chef and the GAP chef. Welcome, Monica. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
It's so nice to talk to you again. And I know that our last episode was very well received. There was a lot of people who were surprised by our conversation around bone broth, but I wanted to kick off today's conversation talking about red meat, because red meat is something that actually many people are afraid to eat because they think red meat is bad for them.
Love it, love it, love it. Red meat. Yes, we hear it all the time that red meat is bad for you. And what I'd like to say is that red meat, the majority of red meat in America really is bad for you, and you shouldn't eat it. So what red meat is good for you? All of the red meat from cows that are raised on pasture, that are raised the way they're supposed to be raised, right? Out on pasture. So yes, red meat in America typically is from confined animal feeding operations, from feedlots. They are cows that are fed soy and corn. They're not even supposed to eat grain. Cows are supposed to eat grass, not grain. Grain is how you fatten them up, right? So you have bigger cows, so they make more money on the cow when it's sold. Yeah, but soy and corn, of course, is, if it's not organic and it's not in these feeds, it is genetically modified. Yes, it is GMO, genetically modified. So yeah, you don't want to eat red meat if you're buying the red meat in a supermarket. They are correct. That will be inflammatory. The red meat that you want to be eating is from grass-fed and grass-finished cows. And that's an interesting piece, because what you'll see if you buy your meat in a supermarket is that it'll say grass-fed, but it won't say grass-finished. And so a lot of producers will grass feed the cows because they can sell it that way. I mean, we'll buy it. We're looking for grass-fed, right? So, but they won't finish the cows on grass. They'll finish them on grain for the last 6 weeks of their life. So at which point they lose all the nutrition that they got on the grass. So yes, red meat is inflammatory if you're buying red meat that is not grass-fed and grass-finished. And where do we find that fabulous meat? We find it from farmers, right? So one more time with feeling, find a farmer, ask them what they're doing with their cows, eat that meat, because that meat is really quite good for you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is such a shame, this particular topic, that people have become afraid of the red meat, but it's not that eating beef is bad. It's the way that beef is treated in industrialized farming that is bad for us. And also that is bad for us on so many other levels, right? So we want to be treating animals in the highest way for the well-being of that animal before they're slaughtered, right? So any food that we should be eating, we should be concerned about the way that that food is raised, because we're basically eating that. We're taking that into our body And if those animals have been stressed, have been tortured, have been fed the wrong food, we're basically ingesting all of that, into our system. So,
yes,
but this has been turned on people. So now people just think red meat is bad. And I love that you brought this up. It's like, yes, if you're buying it in a supermarket, most of that is bad. But if you go to find your local farmer and they're raising their cattle in a humane way, red meat is very good for you. So Can you talk about some of the benefits of red meat, why we actually need red meat to support the health of the body?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, if you get a really good steak, right? Well, let me start in a different place. I'm going to tell them to eat the liver first, but we'll go to steak because we also know that they're not talking to us about eating liver. They're talking about red meat as, hamburger and steak and whatever. So, of course, it's all the amino acids that the body needs, building blocks, right, for the body. But also when you have this beautiful grass-fed and finished beef, it's very high in CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, which is very good for the body also. So it's just a high, it's not only a nutrient-dense protein, right? But it's also good, has the CLA in it also. So yeah, red meat, beef. Oh, it's so funny. I'm having this thought. Beef, it does the body good, right? Isn't that a commercial?
Milk.
Sorry.
Milk.
Oh, it's milk. Well, we're saying it's beef this time. But yeah, so we don't want you to be afraid of eating red meat. Just get it like everything else. As you said, we need to be thinking about how was the animal raised? How was the animal raised? Were they raised in a way that they can express their cowness? That's what Joel Salatin would say. He'd be like, right. He's always about, they need to be expressing their cowness or their pigness or their chickenness. Like, how are they supposed to be? They're supposed to be on pasture. And when you allow animals to be raised in the way that they're supposed to be, then the nutrition is there. And then the inflammation is not there. Right?
Yeah. Well, so that brings me to my next question, which is a topic I feel like you and I talk about quite a bit with clients, and that is around plants. So, the way that I teach people to eat, and a lot of this is being developed with you. So I know that cancer is a metabolic condition. This is a fact. Cancer is a metabolic condition. And so the way that I teach people to eat is as if cancer is a metabolic condition and that we're also wanting to reduce inflammation in the body, right? And so the foods that I recommend are healthy, humanely treated meats, healthy fats, liberal animal fats, and then some vegetables. But what's interesting is most of the challenges that occur with the foods and really helping people with cancer heal are around the plants. So I'm wondering, can you talk about that? Why is that? Like, what's that about?
Well, it's so funny because just today I was thinking about plants, thinking about where all the problems are, right? Plants are where the problems are in terms of human digestion. Why would I think that? Because the whole world is going like, eat plants, eat plant protein. Oh, we could go there at some point, right? But let's all eat plants, right? This is a plant-based food. This is a plant food. And I was thinking to myself, boy, are all the problems when I meet with people, when I meet with clients for all sorts of conditions, they come to me and say, oh, I can't eat oxalates. I can't eat salicylates. I can't eat lectins. I'm doing low FODMAP, right? And I just thought to myself, those are all problems and they all have to do with plants. We don't have these problems with red meat if you get it from your farmer or if you get it from anywhere. Lectins, oxalates, salicylates, all of these things, they all have to do with the plant kingdom. So plants are not as good for you as you think they are. And I know that we spoke last time about plants being cleansers and animal foods being builders, right? But interesting, yeah? So plants have all of these things that work. I like to talk about it as kind of armor, kind of protections, right? Plants don't want to be eaten by humans. or by anything else, they have all of these protections, right? They also have phytic acid and, there's all sorts of enzyme inhibitors. There's all sorts of things that they have to keep them from being digested. And then I thought to myself, well, geez, there's all sorts of things you have to do, cooking techniques to try and get rid of them so that you can actually eat the plants. And that made me think, maybe we just need to be eating meat and animal foods. Well, and at the same time, we also know that people that have issues with these chemicals that are part of the makeup of plants usually have leaky gut. And so if we can heal and seal the gut, number one, then these types of things become less problematic. And then, of course, there are cooking techniques that you can apply to the plants: soaking, sprouting, fermenting, cooking sometimes, which will bring those things down. But interesting, isn't it, that all of these things have one thread going through them? They're all plants. They're problems with plants. I'm going to write a little note. Problems with plants. And I love plants. I love plants.
Yes.
I have lots of plants in my house. I love plants. But when you're going to eat them, they can be quite problematic.
Yeah. And I think the preparations that our ancestors used to do when they were eating plants, we've gotten away from, right? So, but specifically, for the people who are listening to my podcast, most of them are healing. And so, someone who's healthy, who has a gut that's sealed, is in a very good state of health. Yes, they can eat plants. Yep. They can eat these things. But when we're talking about people who are wanting to heal, who may have leaky gut, who have issues within their body that they are trying to heal and remedy, then these things become a problem. And we want to minimize them or eliminate them while we're in the healing phase. And then at some point when you're past all of this and healed, then we have to prepare them correctly. Then it's not like we're not just going to eat a bunch of beans. They need to be fermented before you were to eat any beans, And I think this is the piece that people just don't know. We've gotten away from traditional cooking and don't remember that we didn't eat plants, just raw. And the raw diets honestly make my head hurt for sure.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's what I do. I love to teach people how to soak, sprout, ferment.
Yeah.
These are, as you said, they're ancient practices that people knew. They knew they needed to do something to make these things digestible.
Yeah.
Yep. And we really have gotten away from it for sure. Do not eat canned beans. There, I've said it.
Okay. Okay, so you brought up plant protein, so let's go there.
All righty.
Tell me.
Okie dokie. We're going to talk about plant protein.
Yes.
Do not get me started. I see so many plant proteins out there at this point. Like, let's have pea protein. Really? Tell me how much protein is in a pea. Like, we're talking about green peas here, folks. So there's plant protein. I just don't really have an understanding of why people are pushing, I'll call it the food industrial complex, is pushing plant protein. And the only thing that I can think of is that it stems from their misunderstanding of how the human body works. We said before, we have canines and we have one stomach, right? Like our physiology is meant to eat animal foods, right? Yes. And then the other thing of they're afraid of red meat. So we're all afraid of red meat. So we better find another alternative protein source. Let's do plants. And so there's plant protein powders. There's whey protein powder, which if you want to have whey, folks, it's so easy to make your own. There's pea protein powder. There's soy protein powder. I mean, you name it, we've got protein powder. Please, whatever you do not go near soy. But that's another story for another time too, right? But plant protein gives me a big question. It just actually, I think about it and I go, it kind of makes my brain go a little screwy. Like, plant protein? Really? What are we doing here? Okay, so that's enough of that. I just don't get it. Yeah. I get dairy protein, milk protein, dairy protein. I get animal protein, from beef or lamb or pork or fish or poultry or whatever, all those things. But plants and protein, it just doesn't for me. Plants are carbohydrates for the most part. If you want to talk about seeds, now we're talking about nuts and seeds. There we'll see some protein. There's protein, obviously, in nuts and seeds. But then we get back to that other problem that we were talking about a moment ago, which is the lock, right? The armor of these seeds. You can't digest them easily. You have to soak them or sprout them or ferment them, or all sorts of problems can happen. Not only can you not digest them, but they can leach minerals from the digestive tract. There's all sorts of issues in terms of your digestion that can happen if you start leaning on nut and seed protein, whether that's a milk. I'm rolling my eyes. For people that listen to this, I'm rolling my eyes. Whether that's a nut milk or a seed milk that was not made in a way that you can digest it, or whether it's, a protein powder or something else, they're just really rough on the human digestive tract. Yeah. They will only lead to more problems.
Yeah. I think, this comes from this whole, there's this camp of people who are saying if you're healing, you need to heal with a vegan, plant-based, raw vegetable, raw fruit diet.
Right.
And I think that people get into this kind of ecosystem, and then they're afraid of any of the meats, and certainly the red meats, but then any meats. And so they're looking for any ways, because they know that our bodies need protein. So then they're looking for these plant-based proteins. But what I hear you saying, and what I know, is like, these are not really proteins that our bodies need. The protein that we get is from animal sources. And so when you are having to use powders like a pea protein or something, yes, there may be some protein in there, but this is not the way our bodies are designed to be consuming proteins. And by the way, anything that comes in like a powder, some, shake that you're going to make, I personally don't recommend that. And I know what you're going to say. So tell me. Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say? Anything that comes in a powder is a highly processed food. I don't even know if you can call it a food. You can call it a food fraction, but it's highly processed. Our bodies are meant to eat food, not powder, right? Our bodies are meant to eat food, not powder. So yeah, it sounds terrible, and I really have zero tolerance for protein powders. I just
yeah.
don't.
And this is a big thing for many of the people who I see. They're like, but how am I going to get the protein that I need? And I said, you're going to eat food.
Right.
It's like, but it's a concept that is foreign, actually. So many people have gotten used to, like, what's the quick way to make this? And the quick, if you look at the health of society, the way to get healthy is not eating the way that we eat today, right? We were much healthier, 100 years ago, eating in a more traditional way. And so this requires work. So there isn't this fast, don't come to me or Monica asking for what is the quick, fast, food that I can take on the go to do this. Is like, no, real food is the way that you're meant to get your proteins and your fats. But you brought up another topic that I know is another area that this is one that people ask me about all the time, because they're like, okay, fine. I'm not going to do the protein powder anymore. I'm not going to do that, Dr. Katie. I'm putting that all away. But how about my almond milk? Or how about my macadamia milk? Or how about my coconut milk? And you brought it up. You brought up the milk substitutes.
I brought it up. I did.
I want to hear you talk about it, because this is a big one. This one comes up all the time for me with my clients. So tell me, why are milk substitutes different than just like if they could eat a coconut? You know what I'm saying? If like someone could eat a coconut, how is coconut milk different from that? And then almonds have their own problems. We've got lectins and other issues with the almonds. But why don't we talk about some of these different milk substitutes, and what are the problems that that people should be aware of, so that they can understand why these are not good options?
Sure. Yes. Love it. Okay, here we go. How much time do we have? Sorry. Okay, so there's a difference between coconuts and every other nut and seed. So we'll start with coconut. right? So tree nuts versus coconuts. So one of the biggest, well, we'll start in one way, which is that anything that's processed, something that's made in a factory is not going to be as good for you as something that you make yourself. Bottom line, human hands, love, all sorts of good things, right? Intentionality. Okay, so that's the first difference between I got a coconut and I'm going to take a hammer and some nails and I'm going to, get the beautiful coconut milk out, right? Or I'm even going to get some coconut meat and turn it into my own coconut milk, which you can do. All of these techniques are in my book, easy to do, right? Versus I'm getting a can of coconut milk, which is 9 times out of 10 is going to have guar gum in it, which is a thickener, which we really don't want to be eating. Another thing that feeds pathogens and opportunists in your gut. I'll just put it that way. So in terms of coconut milk, if you would like to make your own coconut milk, yes, go for it. Absolutely. It's easy to do, even if you don't do it straight from the coconut. So very different, and certainly different from these boxed coconut milks, which all have thickeners in them. And the thickeners are not helpful to you or your gut, your microbiome, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the coconut issue.
So if people make coconut milk, great. Like if you can make it yourself, great. Okay.
Yes. And coconut is actually, that's why I did the dividing line between coconut and everybody else, because coconut actually has a lot of things that are beneficial. There are beneficial fats. There's lauric acid, which is very good for your immune system, etc. So coconut milk has a lot of switch. If you want to do something, I'll say it differently. I'll say this. If you'd like to do another milk besides the fabulous raw milk that you're getting, right? Then coconut milk could be an option, especially if you make it yourself. So we'll just put that there. Everything else we're going to talk about is a nut or a seed, a tree nut, right? So we're talking about almonds, macadamia. I mean, God, I go in the store. Don't even go to the store, folks. Sorry. I keep thinking about how there's no food to be found in the grocery store. Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride says it all the time. Do not think you're going to find anything that you can eat in a grocery store. We could talk about that another time too. So every time I go, but when I go in, pardon me, I'm going to clear again. When I go into the grocery store, I see all these milks, these nut milk, seed milk. Now there's macadamia and there's hazelnut and there's almond and God knows soy and rice were the beginning of it all. And we don't even want to talk. Again, do not eat soy. I'm being very clear, right? Like no soy, never. You could have natto, but that's another story for another time too. All right. So these other nuts have all of these, what we call anti-nutrients. Anti-nutrients. One more time with feeling. Nutrients. That means not nutrients. In fact, your body uses nutrients to try and digest them. What are the anti-nutrients? Phytic acid, enzyme inhibitors, lectins that we just talked about. There's so many difficulties with these nuts and seeds that when you purchase a processed food, one more time, there's some machine making that for you. We can talk about making your own. You could make it yourself. And you could make these nut milks or seed milks that are actually going to be good for you.
If you ferment
them or soak them, sprout them, and you need to make them in your own home. But everything that's in the store is processed. A machine made it. And none of these, techniques, none of these traditional cooking techniques were applied to those nuts or seeds. They were made into milk. It's basically just ground up nuts with water. And a lot of times it's with sugar and, again, fillers and thickeners and all sorts of garbage. So stay away from them. They are not doing you any favor at all.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Now, when people ask me, I can just send them this clip as to why not. But also, I love that you described that if they were going to make them on their own, like the coconut milk, yes. If you want to make that on your own, that would be great. And then with the nuts and seeds, we wouldn't recommend that for anyone who's healing, even if you ferment or soak or sprout them just because the potential inflammatory components there. But you've brought up soy now twice.
Sorry.
But I'm good. No, I'm not. Don't be sorry. I want to know what's the big no-no about all soy? So tell us what that's about.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
What's the big no-no about all soy? Well, we start with the knowing that more than 95% of soy in the world is GMO. Okay, so let's just drop that bomb, right? Okay, so then you say, but Monica, what about organic soy? Okay, so that's not GMO, but you have to seek it out, number one. Okay, so what else is going on with soy? Soy has so many challenges. The biggest one that I see is that it's a goitrogen, and it's very high in phytoestrogens. So goitrogen, so it's going to have a negative effect on the thyroid. Who's got thyroid issues? Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people do. So we don't want anything that's going to be affecting the thyroid. We don't need more estrogen in our bodies. I mean, phytoestrogens, it's very high in phytoestrogen, which is why we don't want to be giving soy anything to children, right? Soy formula, not a good idea at all. So it's about the thyroid, it's about the phytoestrogens mostly, and also it's highly inflammatory, and also it has every other problem that I've been talking about this whole time, right? It has all of those anti-nutrients that no one is doing anything about, right? So when you eat something, I just misspoke. When you eat natto is actually a fermented soybean food, which is very high in lots of wonderful things. And that is a food that would be, not now, but later, like if after the healing process, natto is actually a fermented food. And in Asia, in like Japan, etc., they know how to traditionally ferment soybeans so that the anti-nutrients are neutral. I call it being neutralized, right? Like they're taken out of the equation. But that's not what you're getting here in the US. So soy milk and tofu and all of those processed foods, like, oh, okay, so I'm not going to eat cheese, but I'll go eat soy cheese. These are highly, if I could say anything for this one session that we're doing right now is people, your body needs real food, not processed food that was made by a machine, not food that has a label on it and will be shelf stable for years. I mean, that's not what your body needs. So yeah, soy, bad idea. And so many people have gone wrong, right? For so many decades now.
I think what's helpful there too is describing that in Asia, really the way that they were preparing the soy would have been different, right? And then also that what we're buying here is processed and packaged. It hasn't been fermented or done any of those things to prepare the food to remove anti-nutrients. Yep. And then with 95% of it being GMO. And I think a lot of people come to me specifically around breast cancer and they're like, that's all been debunked about doing eating soy or eating foods that have like phytoestrogens in them with breast cancer. But this is bigger than that. We're not just talking about breast cancer. We're talking about in general, these foods are not great for us.
No, these foods are foods we should not be eating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, folks, find your farmer, grow a garden. If you can't grow a garden, no problem. Maybe your neighbor has some extra good stuff, or maybe go to the farmer's market. But let's start getting back to real food and prepare it in a way that your body can, well, not only can your body use it, but when you do these cooking techniques, you're actually increasing the nutrition in the food. You're taking away what's not good for you, and you're bringing in what is good for you, right? When you ferment a vegetable, you are increasing the vitamin C in that vegetable. When you ferment a vegetable, you are creating B vitamins. I mean, it's amazing to see what happens when you take a cabbage, cut it up, put on some salt, put it in a jar, and wait a couple weeks. Like, this is not rocket science. I know we're asking people to go back into the kitchen, but it also doesn't take that long, right? And it's not expensive.
Yeah.
I have people sending me notes all the time. Monica, what's the best probiotic I can buy? And I say, a cabbage, a jar, and some salt. Actually, I really say, kefir. Go get some kefir grains and raw milk, right? But, everybody's looking for the quick fix. Sorry, but it's true. And they're looking for the pill. And really, it's the food, folks. It's the food. And it doesn't have to take long. It doesn't have to take long to do. Many of these things are really minutes, once a week or once a month or once a quarter, to get these types of foods into your diet.
Well, and what you just said is something that I say to people all the time. They're like, well, which probiotics should I be taking? And I'm like, none of them. I'm like, I would throw all your probiotics out because, to be honest, they don't have the active bacteria that they say they have in them. We're designed to colonize our bacteria through foods that we eat, and that is through fermented foods. So when people ask me, like, what probiotics should I take, I say none. You should do sauerkraut or some kind of fermented tonic and kefir. That's exactly what I recommend too. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because probiotics are expensive.
Yes.
And they're a huge, colossal waste of money, because you can do this through food. And frankly, it's going to be better for you. And if you can make these things yourself, then you're getting bacteria that are local for you. And then we're basically getting back to ourselves in the way that we should be eating, is we want to have the bacteria that are local for us.
Yes. And you get to control what's in there, the quality of the ingredients. You get to control the mindfulness, right? It becomes, I keep thinking about cooking for the love of the world. How about cooking for the love of yourself?
Yeah.
I long for the time when people actually want to go in the kitchen and spend the time. Like, you're worth it. You're worth it.
Well, and, one thing that I think would be helpful to talk about, we talked about it a little bit on our last episode about, like a baked chicken breast is not the best way to get the nutrients from, this is not the most nutrient dense way to eat chicken. So Can you talk about meat preparation? Like, what is the most nutritious way for us to be preparing meats if we're looking at increasing the nutrient density of the meals that we're eating?
Sure. Yay. Yes. It is not a boneless, skinless chicken breast, right? It is not. I'm just saying, folks, first of all, what do we need to be eating? We'll talk about chicken. Pasture raised, right? Mm-hmm. No GMO, soy and corn feed, etc. So we're talking about chicken. What do we need to be eating of the chicken? The skin. We need the skin. We need the cartilage. We need the protein. But really, we really need the skin and the cartilage. A boneless, skinless chicken breast is not going to serve you nutritionally. That's the first piece. That's the first point that Katie was making. In terms of cooking, how do we make food digestible? How do we make food delicious? How do we make food? We cook it in a pot with water. Now, we call that meat stock. Chefs will call that braising. Cooking meat in a pot with water is braising. That's the technique. We call it meat stock because what happens when you cook meat, but it has to have a bone in it. So I'm just saying, you can't take a steak and put it in water and it's not going to work. What we want is meat with a joint in it, meat with connective tissue, meat with skin on it. That's what you're looking for, right? So you could get a roast with a bone in it, a roast with a joint in it, etc., or a whole chicken or chicken parts, whatever, but you need all of it. You need the skin and you need the bones and you need the fat and you need the cartilage. And then you put the water in and then you put the vegetables in and then you put the herbs that you love in and a little bit of fabulous good high mineral salt, yeah? And then you put it in the oven, slow and low. Right? Or a little bit faster on the stovetop, no problem, but it's still got a lid on it and it's in a big pot with water. Not a lot of water. We don't want to over waterlog the bones. But when you cook this way, the meat becomes so tender. And that means it's easy for your body to digest. And you're making a stock, which is gelatinous, which helps your body produce more hydrochloric acid, etc., for digesting, right? And you're getting all the collagen and the gelatin and the fat, and you need all of it. And this is the way that we need to be cooking. This is the way your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, right? Or father, but mostly it was mom in the kitchen, yeah? This is what they did. And this is why I go on and on and on about everybody needs to learn how to put a chicken in a pot with water and cook it slow and low and eat the whole thing. And when we do that, a couple other things happen. One thing that happens is when you cook over time, right? Say you put maybe you put a roast in the oven, which is what I did last night. We put a beef roast with a bone in it, joint in it, and vegetables in the oven. Yeah. Had to cook for 4 hours. What happens in the house? Sniff, 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 sniff. Oh, mom, that smells so good. Oh, dad. Oh, whoever, like who's cooking? What's in the oven? What happens? You sniff. When you sniff, the body starts saying, food is coming. Let's get the digestive juices going. This is a big deal. Like people don't even think about it, right? They don't even think about this part of our physiology and how we're made. How do you start digesting your food? By smelling the food that's cooking. And when it's cooking over like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you're like, your whole body is ready. I'm talking about it, and I'm ready for another roast right about now. I'm just telling you. I don't know about you, Katie, but I know I'm there. So, this is a big piece of digesting your food well. And what do I mean by that? We have generations now that have grown up with microwaved food. We don't even want to go there, I'm sure, ever. But the point is, when you're eating quickly, when you're not taking the time to cook these things over time, your body isn't even ready to eat. Like, how many times have you walked in? I don't know. Anybody, just whoever's listening, right? How many times have you walked in and, we're having dinner. So you sit down and you just start eating dinner. Like, you don't even know it was made because it wasn't cooking on the stove for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, right? Like, maybe it came out of the microwave. Maybe it was picked up at the hot bar. Like we're meant to be smelling these things, and the saliva starts, right? The stomach acid starts, right? Like you start getting ready to eat. It's a big deal. I used to, when I would teach my cooking classes, and I'm still teaching them, be teaching more this year, I would say, what a travesty for generations of children and just people, the microwave generation that would, they go into the freezer, they pull something out, they pull open the box, they put it in the microwave, they go, dit, 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 they pull it out, and then they eat something, which isn't even, you haven't smelled it, right? There's no connection to the food. It's I think just a real travesty. But in any case, how do you cook? Coming back around to your question, how do you cook in a way that it's the most nutrient dense for your body? Well, you start with really pure, well-raised, right? Sustainably raised, lovingly raised foods. You cook them in water. If it's meat, you're going to put it cooking in water in the oven or on the stove. You can use a crock pot. Love them. You're going to use good high mineral salt, herbs that you love, and animal fats, right? All these things. That's how you do it. And then, of course, you eat all of the animals, so you'll be eating the organ meats too, which we should probably talk about at some point.
Yeah, I think we're going to do that on our next episode.
All right.
Talk about organ meats for sure.
Yeah.
So, what I'll do is I'm going to link the chicken meat stock recipe here so that way, because the last time we published and when you talked about meat stock versus bone broth, people really wanted to know that about the meat stock. So we can send that or have that available for people, is just like, so you can see what this looks like. This is not hard. And this is one of the things I think that people think with cooking that it's going to be long and hard. And it's like, these are simple recipes that are so nutrient dense. And like you said, make my kitchen smells so good when we make meat stock. It's like, and we do it once a week now so that we can have the stock throughout the meat.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout the week.
Throughout the week.
Okay. Well, so Monica, let people know again where they can find you. Also, you're on Instagram, but your website. And then also you're now working with my clients too. So people who are working with me, you can book sessions with Monica. You can reach out to my team, but tell people where they can find you.
Yep. They can find me on simplybeingwell.com. That is my website. They can find me on Instagram, MC Simply Being Well. They can find me on Ask the Gap Chef on Facebook. If people are really interested in learning about meat stock, they could check out my book.
Yeah.
Which is The Complete Cooking Techniques for the GAPS Diet, 2nd edition. And I actually have an entire meat stock masterclass, which is a class, online class. They can take it anytime they want. It's really... I know it's mine, but it's an amazing class because I have an entire class about what is meat stock and how does it work? Like, why does it work? And then, how do you make it? And then I have a whole class on hearty soups and a whole class on casseroles and a whole class on, right? So it's all
okay, so we need to link. Yeah, we need to link to that. Do you have a masterclass? Is that recorded? So people can just take it?
They can take it.
Okay, that's what we're going to...
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we'll link to is we'll have that available for people so that they can learn more. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so good to hang out with you. I know you'll be back. So good to see you,
I'll be back. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Dr. Katie.
I love you, Monica. Thank you for being here today. Please enjoy a previous episode of Born to Heal. And if you found value in our conversation, please subscribe and share with someone who might benefit. Have questions? Drop them in the YouTube comments or message me on Instagram. Links are in the episode description. And remember, just like me, you were born to heal.